Friday evening happy hour. We are today joined by two gentlemen that would normally be part of my actual Friday evening happy hour. I'm in downtown Seattle. They are in West Seattle. Welcome, John and Ben Nicol DeAndrea of Nomas Coach.
Thanks for having us.
Hey.
We'll dive right into a reader request about a post you did, and I'll share the link about the process of buying a Tesla. Now, I understand the exact creative way in terms of paying for it is not applicable anymore, but I think it's a good example of the creativity you guys do for your travel, your shopping, anything that interfaces with your daily life. It seems you guys find an angle and something interesting. So you ended up with a canary yellow Tesla. let's get to that point.
You just ruined the ending of the story. So, yeah, so you said it exactly. We try not to do anything that does not get through a machine that maximizes the earning potential of how to get the most out of it. So I had to get a new car. This was last year. So we try to maximize it as much as possible to earn miles out of it. I figured out that there was no other easy way. So of course I opted with the incredibly complex and multi-step process of at the time it was available, but not anymore. So can be done right now. But at the time, grocery stores and office supply stores were selling gift cards for running multiple promotions every month in order to get either Visas or MasterCards at a discount. It was something like $500 with a $10 off promotion that kind of took away the activation fee. So since we frequent those locations a lot for our businesses and because we buy groceries and eat, every time I would go there, I buy a few of those gift cards, and then I would use those cards to submit payments via payment processors like Plastique. At the time, Plastique was also had really low fees to run that service. So that's how I ended up paying my car loan via Plastique, via going to grocery stores, buying gift cards in order to earn the most amount of points. Unfortunately, that doesn't really work the optimal way for this scenario, but there are other things that you can take advantage of and pay via Plastique, whether it is mortgages or any other payments for like bills, your light power supplies and things like that. It's still doable. Maybe not at the scale that I did it last year, but I'm sure there are other opportunities that we have not explored out there.
Wouldn't doubt it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The typical example given for Plastique is about paying rent. So give someone, so this is somebody is paying rent and the landlord either doesn't have a payment portal or the payment portal charges fees that may be higher than what Plastique is offering. So this is a service that you can sign up. I think it can cut a physical check to a landlord if they don't accept anything else, or it could have electronic means. And what are the fees? What is the process? What is the hassle level looking at for them?
Yeah, I think the fees currently oscillate between 2 to 3% of the total amount that you're sending. So of course that makes it somewhat prohibitive for certain payments. Every now and then they do run promotions where either the fee is waived or lowered to a 1%, something along those lines, where it makes it more enticing to spend some money. If you're, like you said, your rent, if it's lower amounts, it might make sense. Some of those fees are not capped. So if what you're trying to do is a really high amount, then of course that 1% can signify a lot of money in the end. That kind of makes it not worth spending that money to get points or miles out of the transaction. But otherwise, there may be potential for making it worth your while.
I like it for, excuse me, for like doing the sign-up bonuses. Mm-hmm. It's not necessarily something that you want to do month over month over month when it's 1 or 2 or 3%. But if you are short, you run up in your 90 days and you still have $2,000 or $3,000 to pay for your sign-up bonus, it's a real easy way for you to top that off to make sure you don't lose out on those points.
And usually John is doing so much talking. So I love that Ben's jumped in and started it. English as a second language, your native language and native country, if you'd share for us, Ben.
Yeah, so my native language is Spanish, very particular Spanish. I was born in Argentina and lived most of my life there. So that's kind of my thing. So apologies if my English is not great in my posts. I get through the editor, but some things slip through. But yeah, it's been interesting. It has opened up a lot of interesting avenues for travel to countries that I either speak the language of or kind of can pretend to speak it if it's not Spanish. So that's great.
So coming from a country that has had its its own wild economic ups and downs, how did you when you're in the U.S. and you meet this guy John who's doing all this this bizarre stuff with points and credit cards? What is your impression of it, and how would you explain it to someone overseas?
Um, when I first moved here, mind blown. So I was already reading some blogs before moving here, thinking that it could not be true. It couldn't possibly be true. All the things that were possible at either very low cost or neutral cost. Um, and then, of course, when I came here, it turned out to be true. If you're reading, if you're listening or reading from outside of the U.S., it doesn't really sound like it is, but it is. Options are very limited outside of the U.S., not just in Argentina, because of the particular economical um, panorama that we have down there. But it's the U.S. is very options are abundant and very easy. Not so much outside of the U.S. Mostly, primarily, things are tied to the dollar. So if your country's conversion rate to the dollar is somewhat disadvantaged, then of course everything tied to it will be. So if you think of it, the earning rate for any, say, American Airlines mileage credit card outside of the U.S. will be converted to the local currency at a dollar to local currency rate, and of course that might mean, I think at the time Argentina's conversion rate is a dollar is about 100 and something pesos. So of course that's the rate at which you will be earning miles, which means maybe in about 5 years you'll have enough miles to get a one-way ticket within Argentina. It's options are not.
To be clear, when I met you, it was at 4.
That's right. Yeah.
Now it's at 100.
Yes, things have changed a little bit.
Speak about that. I mean, you're not on the ground, but your family. I mean, you're talking what is the situation in Argentina monetary wise? If travel is what's the travel opening up, not opening up situation? Do you have any sense?
So Argentina is not new to economy crises. So this feels more more on the normal side. People are not freaking out not because it's not serious, but because they've already gone through a few of these in the past 2-3 decades. We've changed currencies, we've adjusted, we've added a few zeros, we've printed higher and higher denomination bills. I think now we are printing probably about 1,000 peso bills. I think the last time I lived in Argentina, the highest bill was 100 pesos. So things have changed a little bit there. Situation is peaceful, if you will, of all the places that have crises. There's a lot of violent demonstrations now that's happening here. Not so much there. If there are any, they are focalized. But if you were to travel to Argentina, you wouldn't be in danger as you would be in other places. Currently, you couldn't go to Argentina anyway because their borders are shut down to travel for a while. I believe they announced that it would go all the way up to September, and that includes even domestic travel. So even if you are in Argentina right now, there aren't a lot of trips. I think they're doing only repatriation flights from overseas. I think there's probably no more than 2 or 3 flights a day, if at all, coming from overseas. But domestically, I think there's also kind of the same concept. If you were unlucky enough to be stranded in one of the provinces and you need to get somewhere else, there's very few options for you to come home other than the private vehicles if you drove to your destination. It's interesting to see how countries deal with the same pandemic scenario in very different ways.
I'm amused by this idea that it's like, oh, this is perfectly normal and not much to see here. It's
I guess you get used to certain circumstances that just feel normal. It's interesting.
of places outside Italy in the world to get Italian food, where does Argentina rank?
Um, it's not in the list, primarily not because, so I think turn of last century, 70% of the population came at some point from Italy. So it's heavily influenced by it. But if you were to buy a pizza or pasta or something Italian influence, you'd notice that it's nothing alike. So it's very, very distant relation with Italy or Italian flavors, but we like to say that it is still Italian food. But yeah, do try it. It's still really good. Pizza is um, incredibly overloaded with toppings, which I really like. And it's just a completely different universe when it comes to flavors. We don't do spicy food at all. So anything other than like black pepper would be way too much for our palate.
Where's the room for spice when you shake a can of salt on every piece of meat, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Salt is the most we do.
Is that, I'm thinking, is that, are people thinking it's like this is Argentinian Italian, just like say India has this Indian Chinese food that they celebrate as being a bit of their own creation in a positive sense that it's different, or do your friends and family think, oh, this is Italian food, and
no, no. The funny thing is that ask any Argentine and they'll say everything we eat was invented in Argentina, probably in pizza, pasta, or anything we eat. We have something that is obviously schnitzel, but we just claim that we invented it, and like don't even try to argue with someone from there. It is, it is, but it's obviously not invented there. There's a lot of sweets and candies that we claim to be the national candy, and they are very Middle Eastern in origin, if not the exact same thing.
Greek.
Greece. I mean, at a certain point, we were a very desirable place to move from Europe. So everybody went there. I'm talking about early 1900s. So we got a massive influx of everybody, and they brought everything with them. But then they forgot what they brought from home, and it just ended up being local or localized with the local ingredients, which is something that I love. I mean, the passion that people have in thinking that it's authentically Argentinian without knowing that we kind of poached it from somewhere else. It just fascinates me.
Cultural appropriation.
Yeah, in a way. Yeah.
I remember a piece a few years back in The Economist looking at the start of the 20th century, people predicting what would be the most successful country in the Americas economically, and they went through all these cases that Argentina was the one that like maybe even rival the U.S. in economic power, and at the time it was positioned like that. I hear. So let's cruise all the way to upstate Michigan and the charms of travel in Michigan, John. If those of us watching in the U.S. are thinking of a little bit of travel around the states and potentially places that don't have many people, or we hope won't have many people. I went to the Upper Peninsula of Michigan last year and was just incredibly wowed and
gorgeous.
Hardly saw a soul then, and there wouldn't be room for many with such limited accommodation, very small scale cabins and resorts. So talk about the state of Michigan.
It's great for 4 months out of the year if you like weather. Otherwise, shoot, you don't even know. I mean, it was just talking to some family that 4 days ago it was 90 degrees, but then a week before that they had potential snowstorms. So I can't figure out what the hell happens with Michigan. I just don't. It's been long enough that I've gone away that I don't remember a lot of the of the weather. I remember I went to school one day and I opened the door to the house and the snow had drifted up against the door, so I had to clear like my way out to get to the bus stop. And school was not canceled. We were going to school. Whereas now it seems like if you do that here in Seattle, I mean, even an eighth of an inch of snow cancels things out. I do love going back to Michigan. I think that there's a lot of if you love nature, if you love lakefront, if you want to go, I mean, there is no better place in Michigan. It's absolutely gorgeous, and it's very approachable. Well, when there's not, if you're not, as long as you're not one of the COVID centers. If you're heading up north, where there's more openness, as in space, to go, it's absolutely fantastic. It's gorgeous.
Fantastic. And well, one of the comments came in, and I don't know if it's sarcastic, meant happy or not. All the winking emojis can mean many things, but it says tuning in for his 36th straight podcast with a couple of gay guys, no less.
I'm wondering if it means it's his 36th straight podcast.
Yeah.
Right.
And he does post every single day of tuning in, so it's a running comment. So we'll take it in that positive.
Right.
Okay.
We'll take it in that positive sense, and,
Sure.
and your blogging is both open and advocacy and focused on positive messages. So talk about some of the changes, maybe destinations you've seen that have become more welcoming to your visits, or you've felt warmer reception, safer if there were places that in the past you didn't consider safe. It's a broad palette.
One of the places that really intrigued me was when we went to Dubai. I expected Dubai to be more restrictive, if you will. When we go to countries where we're not certain of how things will play out, we typically book a room with 2 beds, or I'll be Nickel, he'll be D'Andrea. So we'll try to at least respect the norms of where we're going, instead of feeling like we're imposing our customs and culture on them. But when we checked into Dubai, we booked 2 beds, and we checked in, and they said, I haven't upgraded it. It's a king bed. I assume that will be okay. And we looked thinking, oh, well, sure, that's fine. Yet when we went down the street to Abu Dhabi, it was completely different. I mean, same country, but much more conservative place. So Dubai, anything goes, dig in, king bed, all's great. But Abu Dhabi, just an hour down the road, very much conservative, more strict. So just sometimes not even within the same country, but just different cities, with the things you notice. We felt really great in Morocco. We felt super awesome in Egypt. I remember we had a tour guide who was constantly telling us how awesome Lindsay Lohan was. And what did I think about Lindsay Lohan? And wasn't she so sexy? And, it's yes. And then, of course, I had my wedding ring on, and he says, oh, I see you're married. Why are you not traveling with your wife? And here we are in the backseat of this guy's Toyota Corolla driving around Egypt. And I said, sometimes it's better to go out on your own, right? Like, yes, my friend, yes. And that was it. No more conversation about that whatsoever. So I think it's just understanding where you are and respecting people's differences, and not trying to say, hey, we're here and we're gay and you need to deal with it. More like, hey, we're here to enjoy the culture. It just happens that we're gay.
And you're mentioning parts of the world that I've heard people refer to, that the male culture seems much more gay than a lot of places, because you see so much physical intimacy amongst men that's platonic, but it's much more comfortable being around men, or even as I said, physically close, and that certainly in the US it's like you're either standing 6 feet away in normal times, that virus, or you're very close.
I'll tell you. So I come from a place where everybody greets each other by kissing on the cheek, regardless of your gender. It's very normal. Everyone does it. It does not strike me as interesting or colorful or anything. It's just been very normal to me. But then I think it was the first time we went to Egypt. We were just walking down the street, and we started noticing that every guy was kissing each other on the cheeks, and then walking, hand in hand,
mm-hmm.
in the street, just walking into the mosque that way, and which was just completely took me aback, because I just assumed that would not at all happen, and of course it's completely normal. Apparently, we did get the kissing on the cheek from Middle Eastern cultures. Some of that bled into South America, and it now is very common. And I just didn't even know about that. But I find that fascinating. It's a learning that I love about traveling, because I would have never even Googled whether that was a normal thing or not. It just happens to be, and you can't see those things unless you travel to those places. And it's kind of refreshing to to experience it.
Fantastic. Nancy's requesting if we can see your dog at some point, so see what you can do there. But yeah,
Perhaps towards the end, we took him out for a big run so we would get him tired so he wouldn't be barking in the background, and just let him run for 20 minutes. And I don't think I've ever seen him that tired.
Yeah. I'm surprised you don't hear the snores in the background.
Yeah. I'm happy to provide you with a photo if you'd like to see one in the meantime. There, that's what he looks like.
Perfect.
We'll get the real one out here in just a little bit. Yeah.
And that point you made, John, about striking a balance of respecting the culture, and I think this applies to any traveler with any of the views that they're coming from, whether it's identity, politics, going to another country. And I don't think there's a hard or fast answer, but I've generally tried to be respectful but engaging with people, and I've never bought in the idea that you just totally shun a place, but I can understand why others do. So talk about some of those decisions. Are there places you won't go at all? Are there places where you maybe are more forceful on your views, or is it?
I don't think that we would automatically rule some place out. Obviously, we want to be safe. So places that are inactive wars, obviously that's to me not my comfort zone, and I just won't go there for obvious reasons. But I mean, we've gone to places where obviously they don't. They're not very friendly towards us, so we've felt comfortable, safe. There are a lot of places that even on the down low, they're friendly anyway, even though their laws are not. People, you gotta distance the country position towards certain aspects and their people. Sometimes those are not aligned at all. So we try to think about that as well. I've also I mean, I have lived in the U.S. for a while now, and there are places in the U.S. that I just don't feel comfortable or safe going, whereas in overseas I just don't. And then again, I didn't grow up here, so my gauge is definitely adjusted differently than locals are. I remember going to Greece probably 4 or 5 years ago. And we were staying at a hotel right across from the government palace I think it's Syntagma Square, and there were giant protests. They were burning things down, and there was riot police everywhere. And I remember just walking out of the hotel into a pack of probably 200, 300 police members and riot gear, and just walking through them, not batting an eye. And when I turned around, John was still in the hotel entrance, just not even processing what was going on, completely freaked out. And
is this like in your home country when they try to raise the subway prices or something?
Yeah, certain things just don't even faze me anymore, and I would have not felt unsafe. And then of course when I saw his reaction, then that it hit me that maybe we shouldn't be walking there. So yeah, it's I think a matter of aligning your realities with the reality of the place you're visiting. Some things are normal, even though they feel really weird to you. Going through airport security in some countries is a very traumatic experience for some people. I remember visiting the U.S. on a visa before I moved here, and even when I was a permanent resident before becoming a citizen, it used to be a grueling experience. I mean, I was detained multiple times for hours while they were checking my papers.
And I would sit in the waiting room and no one would tell me anything.
Yeah.
So
this is back when gay marriage wasn't legal federally. So our situation was weird depending on what state we were coming in through. Where in some places he would be allowed to stick around with me. Since we were in other places, we would just be friends that happened to live together and be married to one another. So I think you readjust based on location and prior experiences. I definitely understand how people who are now getting into the travel experience, some countries might sound like completely insane to visit than if you've already been to, say 20, 30 other countries. You become more adjusted to those realities and more comfortable with them. And I think that's exactly the purpose of travel.
Yeah, I can say from experience when someone with a foreign passport becomes family, you, as a U.S. citizen, you get quite an eye-opening of exactly what the machinery of the U.S. government is and exactly what your powers as a citizen are not in many cases.
That's true.
We've got a question about one of your favorite subjects, aviation. So talk about the flying experience out of Payne Field and say, what is Payne Field?
If I'm not mistaken, it's the newest airport in the U.S. that's not a remodel. I think it's a fresh new passenger terminal. We'll call it the Everett Field, the North Seattle Field, where United Airlines and Alaska Airlines operate flights sort of regionally out of there. It is amazing, from the inexpensive valet parking to the 3 minutes through security. If more flights left out of Payne, I would love it. I mean, it's not like they can't take 747s. We know they can. It's a Boeing field. So it's great. Like you drop the car off, you drop your keys off to the attendant, you hand them $20. They go park your car. You walk through security. The TSA, there's usually 3 people there and no one's doing anything. You walk into your waiting room, which is beautiful, nice leather seats, a bar, tableside waiter service, the fireplaces, all the memorabilia. And then there's 2 gates, left, right. And then you just say, coming out of this gate, coming out of that gate, you walk in, you're done. I mean, it is unreal. It's because of where we live in Seattle, it now takes us about 45 minutes to get to that airport and about 20 minutes to get to SeaTac. So unless we, normally I would say let's go to SeaTac so we could enjoy the Centurion Lounge and enjoy all the other stuff, but now there's not a whole lot of that, so maybe we'll look into Payne more often. But as far as the travel experience, we could arrive 40 minutes before our flight and just walk onto the plane with no issues whatsoever.
Yeah. Having said that, I think it's the newest airport that has shut down the fastest, because I think there's no flight being operated currently out of there. Good point. No visiting that airport anytime soon. Primarily because all the routes they serve are also served out of SeaTac, so they have become incredibly redundant now that there's probably about 5 people in the whole airport at any given time. So it does make sense to have it shut down.
I've not been there. It seems to me like it would be a bit like what the Marine Terminal at LaGuardia, that experience, or maybe even Long Beach in the LA area, of a cool, maybe retro design looking building. And as you said, in fast and pleasant. And I guess what flying around domestically in Australia still is and so rare in the US.
Yeah, it felt like a very un-American airport in that way. There's still security, obviously, and everything else, but there's like 2 check-in counters, 3 TSA people. It takes literally less than 5 minutes to go through the whole experience, and then you're in somebody's living room waiting for that plane to take you somewhere else. It felt very unusual the first time we went. I think we've done it 2 or 3 times, probably. And it keeps feeling odd in the sense that it's kind of like an elevated experience, which love it. And for the longest time, Alaska was doubling the amount of miles you were getting for any flight departing Payne, just to get it out there and get people traveling through that new airport. I don't think that's the case anymore, but
now Alaska is offering bonus on all flights, for the rest of the year. So
you guys don't. There's some chatter about hostels and that in Buenos Aires, and I imagine you have no reference point for hostels and budget accommodations, so we might have to.
I think the first time you went to Argentina, you stayed in a hostel.
I stayed in an Airbnb for $21 a night, but I mean, honestly, with the exchange rate right now, we were looking at Airbnb. We were thinking about, well, if we can work from home, why not work from Argentina? So we looked at just going down there for 2 months and renting an apartment, and the entire apartment in Palermo and Recoleta was $550, $600 a month for the whole apartment. Nice apartment for $500. So
I would say unless you're really set on the hostel experience because you enjoy staying at hostels, if you're doing it for the trying to budget your travel better, Argentina is probably not the place where you should do hostels anyway. I think so. Last time I was there in, I'd like to say August last year. Um, I was staying at a hotel, and I think it's called Two Hotel. Um, it's in the middle of downtown, which is a nice area to stay at. It's close to everywhere, and I think the rate came up to less than $50.
It was like 50
a
or
day,
$55. Yeah.
Where there are hostels for that same cost. Of course, obviously, I had my bed made every day and breakfast and everything else included as well. So it's the break point between a hostel and a hotel in Argentina might not make sense. Of course, there's every range in both of those sides, but look into hotels as well if that's not outside of what you're looking for.
Yeah, that triggers mind, and a particularly lecherous acquaintance of mine turned up for a long stretch in Buenos Aires, and I had assumed it wasn't within his budget, but the apartment rental was. So that worked out. The follow-up question: are there any areas in BA that are presently unsafe to stay?
No, I wouldn't say there's any particularly unsafe areas within the city of Buenos Aires. There are just areas where you wouldn't want to stay at because the way, I mean, it's a all in all, the Great Buenos Aires area is a 12 million people city. Some of those areas are purely business center, so some hotels are there, and what that means is that come 6 p.m. everything literally shuts down, which kind of forces you to get out of the area to have dinner or to do any activities. If you're going in the winter, it gets dark at 6-7 p.m. So if you're having dinner at that time, then you have to get in and out of the neighborhood.
Who has dinner at 6 p.m. in Argentina?
Well, for non-locals, it is.
No one.
A hint: if you're in Argentina, you should not ever go out for dinner before 9 p.m. Because nobody will be there. But yeah, that means that some locations. Like the theater.
You eat before 9 p.m. The waiter will find a way in English to come over and say, the tip is not included in the bill. I remember that phrase.
Yeah. Tip is not included in
most,
the bill.
Most likely you will end up eating reheated food from lunch, which was just stopped being served a few hours before that. So yeah, I would not recommend early dinners in Buenos Aires unless you're doing it in a hotel, which obviously caters to foreigners.
And I remember with my wife and I one visit, it was a late lunch. It was too late for the local lunch, but it was way too early for dinner, and we ordered, and it took 50 minutes, and then it turned out she had ordered something that she didn't want, and there would have been a miscommunication. I was like, Stefan, you can eat it. I'm not waiting for another order to be cooked.
Yeah, I would say something that I learned maybe late in life after I went outside of the country several times and exposed myself to other experiences. Service, especially in the food service industry, is not something they particularly do in Argentina. I would say they do. It still feels like home to me, but it is definitely not the same kind of service that you get here in the States. You're not gonna get asked whether your food was okay. They know their food is okay. They're not going to volunteer that question to you. If you didn't like it, it's more on you than it is on them in their mind.
If you interrupt them from the football game they're watching, it's
exactly yes. You have to mind your manners in that respect. And at the same time, you will not be asked politely to leave the table by
I'll just leave the check here whenever you're ready.
Yeah, that won't happen. I think that's more of a European influence style. You can stay in a table for like 6 hours, which is usually how long a dinner lasts in Argentina anyway. So yeah, that should be fine.
And another follow-up is about visiting Ushuaia. How many days? This would be in connection with an Antarctica cruise.
Yes.
So much there.
There's not a lot there. I think literally there's probably about 2 cities and the whole island. There are not a lot of activities. Very, very few people live in the whole province in where Ushuaia is. The city is very quaint visually. Not a lot of activities beyond seeing penguins and a couple museums. So I would not stay more than 2 or 3 days. If you wanna have like packed days where you're doing activities. If you wanna just stick around and not do much, just wake up, have breakfast, and leisurely stroll around the city, maybe a few more days would be fine, but don't expect there to be a ton of things to get done in the city. The city itself is small, and the next city, where you can get to, is not going to be anywhere nearby where you can walk to. Car rental agencies are not abundant, so your options are limited unless you get together with a local and they'll show you around. There's not a lot of things outside of the city center and maybe a couple nature preserves. That's about it.
I was just actually pulling up since I went to Ushuaia. That's kind of where we met.
Yeah.
Well, not that there, but there was a pizza place. I was trying to find it. It was Dieguito was the name of the place. So it's like Diego, so Dieguito. Dieguito was the name of the pizza place that I had a good pizza and some local beer. So if you're gonna go to Ushuaia, Dieguito will be a nice place for some good pizza. And they do pizza really well in Argentina too.
They do, yeah.
Fantastic. And let's transition to what I might call from Sears to St. Regis for you guys. Safeway to St. Regis. So the travel hacking, but tee it up with, you recently did a post of airline awards to book now, and it's a great roundup of some of the opportunities that are out there. If you can, you guys mentioned some of the Delta Sky Miles for domestic flights, Alaska for Cathay and JAL, Virgin Atlantic for Delta, which I think is back. And then we just saw changes with Etihad just in the past few days in their Air Canada partnership. So pick from your grab bag. I'll put the link in the post of what are some of the opportunities for people looking for travel in the next year.
So I'll say beyond the particular really great options to start booking, I think now is a great time to start booking for the future, particularly because most people have shied away from making bookings, which makes anything with miles wider availability than normal. So that's your chance to get ahead of the game and make some even tentative bookings for maybe late this year or next year beyond the particularly desirable places. I think that's a good strategy to start now.
I think that I think for me the thing about awards is that if you've always wanted to go somewhere and you didn't know how to get there, they're, like you say, they're open now. So Delta has the routes that I would normally fly with Delta would normally be on a 767, or they're not really that great. We booked ourselves a trip to Amsterdam out of Seattle, and they opened up the suites, the new Delta One suites, which normally would be impossible to book. And so that's now open with Delta One suites. We were looking the other day for a trip from London.
I think that's generous calling them suites.
Well,
I've flown it once, and I pushed the wrong button, and the partition fell into the aisle, and I almost injured a passenger. So I'm.
As someone who is 6'3" and you get the Delta footwell like that just goes down to this, the idea of actually having a rectangular space for me to put my feet is all I really care about when I'm flying on a Delta.
But it's something. Delta has, other than the 747, has this history of a wide variety of business class seats that are all designed to break your ankles. Because even if you're not as tall as you, 6'3", you're 6 foot, you're 5'10", 5'9". If you're in the wrong position,
which leads me to flying on Etihad, right? So every year we sort of make this pilgrimage to the Middle East. We always will fly one direction with Emirates and the other direction with Etihad, just so we can have the experience of flying both. And the cool part about flying in the apartment is you have a sofa that turns into a bed, and you have a mirror to get yourself ready, and a gigantic lazy boy style seat. We would always book London to Abu Dhabi with a connection somewhere else in the Middle East for 62.5 American Airlines miles. But we've also been trying to pick some unique awards. Like we flew from LA to Paris on Air Tahiti Nui. Using Delta miles. It was a connection from Tahiti to LA to Paris, and the service was phenomenal. Nice. And trying to find those really kind of unique flights that maybe you've always wanted to do. You did Cathay from Vancouver to New York. We just actually had to cancel a trip on Cathay First just because of COVID. So we'll book that again. But I think that if you wanted to secure a Cathay flight in first class and you have the Alaska miles, you should probably do that now before the One World transition becomes final and Alaska is pressured to change the value of the tickets and not charge the same amount. Because it seems to be across all the other One World, with the exception of British, which is ridiculous. They seem to have this steady cost of what something should be, and then Alaska charges whatever they want. So I would book now and then feel free to change later. You can absolutely cancel right now. Everyone's letting you cancel with COVID. So book now, and then if it doesn't work out, cancel it.
And for those that are wondering why the heck these guys are mentioning Alaska, for points travelers worldwide, with their buy miles promotions with these, there's points travelers all over the world that have never been in Alaska, never flown an Alaska Airlines plane that use this program for a huge number of awards on partners that they do fly. And so yeah, to your comments about how that could very well result in some increased prices. I mean, a few years ago, what they did to Emirates, I was curious. You mentioned you fly Emirates every year. What's your booking strategy? Is that a JAL award, Marriott transfer to JAL, or?
No. We're lucky enough that we travel Alaska. We fly Alaska a lot, so we do earn a lot of Alaska miles every year. So we requalify every year for their top tier status, which is enough to earn a lot of miles. But in seat flying, so we then turn back around and try to use the best strategies to redeem those miles. So even though it is a ridiculous amount to redeem for first class in Emirates, I think we still somehow find a way to justify doing that because it's worth it. We obviously try to get the longest flights available, and even if we're not going to the Middle East, we will kind of go out of our way to go through the Middle East to justify that really expensive booking with Alaska miles.
Well, not only that too, but because Alaska is so generous with the stopover rules, we did Dubai to LA with a 9-month stopover and then LA to Seattle. So we really just kind of got a free trip in LA. And we just booked ourselves an extra, and then you could even do, for example, Dubai, LA, Seattle, 9-month stopover, Seattle, Bozeman, and then go to the national parks. So you can attach that extra leg on with as much of a layover as you want, and I can almost guarantee that no one has ever bought a ticket from Dubai to Bozeman. Maybe. In the same token, you could do.
I bet there's actually a ton, and that's partly why that Emirates flight to Seattle exists. That there's
maybe.
I could guarantee you there's a residence inn or a town place suites that has a lot of long-term residents for whatever big companies there that have their IT support. And
I suppose that's true. Yeah, I mean, the Alaska is very generous with allowing you to sort of find ways to add on trips and to do things that most airline programs would not be. So and even there, like we did Etihad. We did what was it? Oh, we did the Maldives. So we did the Maldives, Abu Dhabi, London. So again, like tacking on an extra city when you're booking with miles to just get an extra trip out of it.
And you mentioned Etihad. So those that don't follow the news day by day, there was big news in the Point Sense about their partnership that just launched out of the blue. I don't think it was leaked or anything with Air Canada's Aeroplan.
To be honest, have not read it, and here's why. Right, so it's a Star Alliance. I don't think we're loyal to Star Alliance at all. Like we've got membership rewards which transfer over to Air Canada's program. I've never in my life booked anything on Air Canada using their miles. I used Turkish miles once to do it, but it's never been on our radar simply because we have a very good stash of American miles, and we know how to book those. Because we have some American miles, we just didn't look into it. Now I know that people like it because they have a lot of American Express membership rewards. They can easily get the stuff over there. So I won't speak to something I don't know about, but more options are always good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I should say more options are always good, except when people realize how easy it is to book this stuff, and I can't then get our seats, which we want. So,
I never feel like that. I feel like I don't begrudge somebody else. It's like I should be the only one that gets in the airline lounge and nobody else should. But if the door was slammed on me, I'd want in. So I've never taken that. I mean, people that they call the boarding area the battlefield, because they're competing for you for upgrades. And like that's so lacking in perspective.
Absolutely.
I'm going to put in the links. You recently did a recap in your 1000th post. You put a review of some of your most commented and controversial. And yeah, I guess in the past, the insider blogging tip on aviation was always write a post about traveling with babies would always guarantee you traffic. But last year it was emotional support animals that that overtook that. So that post is in there, and you'll see the fight that ensued. But I wanted to lock in on one you're sharing in there about, can you afford to fly first class, and specifically the international premium cabins. I've never flown international first class. It's declining number of airlines that even offer the product. I've seen something like, say, Korean Air, which looks almost indistinguishable for business class, but others, there's just a massive difference. So what are the ones to prioritize, and how soon, if you think they're going away, how soon do you have to try to snag them?
So a little bit about our mindset when we travel. We both work very hard at our jobs. We both have 9-to-5 jobs, and our vacations start from the moment we lock the front door. So I don't want anything of that experience to be less than a first class experience, right? Taking an Uber to the airport, going through the priority security with Clear, getting to the lounge, getting on a first class flight. Like, there's no reason that I work as hard as I do to be shoved in the back of a plane and thrown reheated, gross foil covered meals and not be able to sleep for 8 hours. Like, damn it, I want to be comfortable and I deserve it. And, can you afford to fly first class? Can you not afford to? Like, why would you take one vacation a year and slum it? And you absolutely can do it. And that's what we try to get across to people, is that with a little bit of just ingenuity and tweaking and learning, it's not that hard to do it in first. We do Emirates once a year because they treat us really, really well. I enjoy caviar in airplanes. I do not enjoy caviar in my own kitchen, but when it's served to me in an airplane, it's really, really tasty. And I want to feel pampered, right? So,
and by the way, these guys are great cooks. I can personally speak to it. And if you're over at their home for dinner, you're likely to have somebody like an Amex Centurion Lounge employee also there as part of the dinner party. So the trip starts definitely from their kitchen.
Of course,
Yep.
Yes.
And having said that, we do lead a very normal life. We are not wealthy by any stretch of the
The guy
imagination.
with the canary yellow Tesla.
Yes.
Purchase with gift cards.
Purchase with gift cards.
Yeah.
Hey, it was a struggle. So yeah, having said that, I mean, we have very normal lives. We work normal jobs, and we like to have a treat when we go on vacation, and that's why we do it. We have done coach, we have done residences by the side of the highway,
La Quinta, across the railroad tracks. That was fun.
We have done that, and again, it's great. It still enables you to travel, but if there are better ways to doing the exact same thing while not having it had an impact on your finances and stuff like that, I mean, all the more reason to do it. And I think that's why we try to maximize the up the luxury scale when we travel, not because other travel is not worthy of doing it. It's because it just feels double the fun when we can do it without actually bringing back.
Yeah. And I think that if you have the ability to book an Emirates flight in first class for next year, when hopefully they're going back to normal service, do it. If you have the ability to book an Etihad apartment, do it. We haven't flown residence. We've seen it. We were given a tour of the residence, which was nice, but for a 6-hour flight, I don't need a private room. Like, it's okay. I'm okay with a semi-private room. And it's, book those for next year when I hope that it gets back to normal. Other than that, I don't really see any reason we don't ever use our miles to fly on American, United, or Delta Metal. with the exception of now this one flight that we have in September to go to Amsterdam. This will be the first time we've ever flown on a domestic carrier out of the U.S.
I flew Delta to Argentina.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
No, you didn't. You flew Aeromexico.
You're right.
I am right.
See,
Yeah,
it doesn't even
I
register.
think we talked about the coconut water because it's easier to get the coconut water in economy than business in Aeromexico. So I'm in the back enjoying my coconut water, and you've got tap water and bottled water.
Well, if you ask nicely in Spanish, they'll bring it up front to.
I've asked nicely in English the handful of times I've been in business, and they brought it up, but I had to tip you off that it exists back there.
Agua de coco, por favor.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah. Yeah, you flew Aeromexico.
Yeah, it's right.
And it's if I can touch on that real quick, just to South America, since you got people talking about South America, one of the really cool parts, sort of our secrets, if you will, is that Delta charges $110,000, miles to go from Atlanta to Buenos Aires on that only flight. But Virgin Atlantic considers all of South America to be one region. So whether you're flying from Colombia to Miami or Buenos Aires to Atlanta, it's only 45,000, I think, in business class one way. So flying from Buenos Aires to Atlanta is only 45,000 in business, as opposed to 110 Delta. So great, sort of, to take advantage of that.
Yeah, and there is no first class to South America, so we are still trying to find a way for me to get to.
Every airline puts their worst planes, the oldest, beaten up ones, on the South America routes.
They really do.
Well, he's talking about doing the something like New York, Frankfurt, Buenos Aires. They do have Lufthansa first on the route.
That would yeah. But, and I think your comment there about the differential price, I think that's one of the keys for people that are mystified about the idea, how could I have enough miles for business or first? That a lot of these airlines, some are changing and revenue-based programs and that, but a lot of airlines traditionally, it's maybe business is double the economy price and first class is maybe triple, or it's maybe not even that. So it's, whereas cash prices, it might be 5 times, 10 times, 30 times the miles price. It can be much closer. So you're not getting these miles entirely out of thin air. So there is hard work to them, and we can. Safeway is a big grocery store chain on the West Coast and other parts of the U.S. as well. Talk about how you go grocery shopping at Safeway to give a sense of where this Emirates first class comes
This is
from.
where I just hide underneath and go away.
I would
Negative cost ground beef is where we're getting to.
So I would start with we try to not have any expenses that have not been optimized. So that is to say, we shop, I don't know, Macy's things at Safeway. So if we have something to buy at a brand, at a company, whatever it is, whether it's Amazon or any other brand, we will probably go get a gift card at a grocery store so that we maximize the amount of points that we're getting for that purchase. Whereas if we just purchase it directly at Amazon, it would be, a point $1 or a mile $1. Some credit cards give you bonus points or miles for that purchase at grocery stores. So obviously we try to funnel as much of our expenses as is possible through all of those avenues that are bonused.
One of the great parts about grocery stores is they'll have a fuel rewards program or they have a grocery rewards program. So very often Safeway will run a promotion, for example, 10x points on a Bed Bath & Beyond gift card. So by simply buying that $100 card, you now get 1,000 points towards your food. And then that 1,000 points equates to $7 off. So you're buying this gift card, you get $7 off your groceries, and then as you end up stacking all these rewards, all the rewards stack. So I'll go in and buy a 1.5 pounds of ground beef for $7.30, and then all the rewards that I've stacked into the account start hitting. So it's $1 off 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 10, $7 off meat, $1 off purchase, $1 off meat. So at the end of it, the computer spits out that for that $7 ground beef, they owe me $46.12. So going in and just seeing the cashier to the point where you walk in and they go, "It's you again." Like they know it's us coming to the grocery store. They know they're going to get ready. I think our last visit, we walked away with around $163 from the grocery store. So finding anything that we can do to earn that extra little step or go that one extra step so we can use that $163 to pay for the other stuff that we can't get on discount.
And I would say not having grown up here in the States, when my dad was visiting last year, we started doing this more heavily then, and we took him for one of these runs where he was absolutely convinced that we just walked out of the store after having robbed it of their merchandise and their money. So we had to spend a good 45 minutes explaining how this whole system worked, because it just sounded completely nonsensical and a complete lie to him. But yes,
that's why he looked shell shocked at the Swedish pancake breakfast when I saw it.
Yeah, I don't think he ever saw us pay for anything the entire trip. Fully convinced that he just thinks that we walk around going, "These aren't the droids you're looking for," and people just give us money and walk away with things. We did go to Sears. We had a bunch of Shop Your Waypoints built up, and we decided to take him on a shopping spree for clothing. And he filled up his shopping cart with probably $350, $400 worth of clothes. And by the time it was done, I handed the lady a $10 bill, and she gave me the receipt. And I looked at him and I said, "Run!" And we just ran out the store. And he's like, "What?" He's like, "Run, run!" Fully thinking that we were robbing Sears of $400 in clothing. It was fun to play jokes on. It was a good time. Yeah.
Well, the dark side of this is Thanksgiving dinner. You're spending the whole time ordering from Kohl's instead of chatting with us.
the price to pay.
Just because I need 64 blenders doesn't mean that you should judge me for buying 64 blenders. Okay.
It's a take on, instead of one of the couple like, watching the football game or something. It's honey, you talk to the guests. It's I'm buying popcorn on Kohl's. You talk to the guests.
Hey, Kohl's was great to us this Black Friday. Black Friday is our most sacred religious holiday. We never miss it.
That's the
And
we will not be outside of the country.
This is true. No trips are ever planned on Black Friday. We are here domestic.
It's a comment my wife made. She said, "How come all of these travelers don't travel on Thanksgiving?" It's like, that's the one time the points people can't afford to be away.
Yes. Yep.
You guys are big into the Marriott program, Lifetime Titanium. I think both of you, or I forget.
Yeah, Lifetime Titanium and currently Ambassador. Yep.
Oh wow! So Ambassador is you're actually spending some for your experiences, not entirely points. So talk about some of those. I feel like the hotel thing is, so many people will book an award or cash for really luxurious seeming place. It's a big price in points or cash to their mind, and they're setting themselves up for disappointment because it's like everything has to be perfect. I'm spending so much on this. I put so much into it. Certainly my feeling is often that way, that stays I have no expectations for. I feel like if they go great, I'm happily surprised, and if something goes wrong, it's whatever. So you guys have sampled so much of the luxury of the Marriott portfolio. What are a few that really did justice to the reputation, the big points prices?
I can tell you one definitely not to go to: the Park in India. Good Lord.
Yes.
At Saturday at 11, it turns into a nightclub, which is great. But the one hotel that we do make a pilgrimage to every year without fail is the St. Pancras Renaissance, the Renaissance in London. To the point where when we check in, they know us by name. They have our favorite room set aside. They have our coffee order, our breakfast order. They know when we're arriving. We are family at that hotel, and it is just phenomenal. We've stayed at the St. Regis Maldives, which was absurdly amazing. We've stayed at the St. Regis in New York, which was really sort of old school luxury.
Yeah.
And even something like you said, going to a hotel where we didn't think it was going to be that great, like the Sheraton in Bali. There's plenty of really interesting hotels. This is just a category 3. It was at the time what we had points for, what we could afford. We stayed there, and we still have like the business card of the VIP ambassador.
Hmm.
Still talk to her. We were treated amazing. I remember to the point where we made a concern that the restaurant was too warm, and that we thought that it would be great if it would have more air conditioning. It's hot, it's Bali. They took that from the Platinum at that time ambassador, that more air conditioning meant that the next day they brought in an entirely new air conditioning unit and installed it, because the Platinum ambassador guest was not happy with the level of air conditioning. So instead of just turning it down 3 degrees, they brought an entirely new 50,000 BTU whatever unit, and we saw them wheeling it across the lobby while we were having tea. And we said, "What happened?" "Oh, an ambassador guest was not happy, so we're installing more air conditioning."
Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
Oops, sorry, lost in translation. Just the cooler being the good next time.
But I would say there's something to be said about other type of luxury that are not over the top. So like the Protea hotels in South Africa, they're completely affordable, whether it's on points or cash, and they're phenomenal. We were not expecting anything out of it. When we went there for the first time, I think they had just been joined by Marriott. So it was not, there weren't a lot of reviews that we knew of. Their website wasn't particularly great in the way of pictures and any explanation. So when we showed up, I think the first one we went to was the one at the airport. So it wasn't incredible, but it was really good anyway. And then the next day we just went to Kruger Park, and they have the Protea Kruger Gate, which is literally at the gate. You can walk from the hotel to the entrance to the park. And I remember that just blew my mind, because it was incredible. More than luxury and gold and butlers. It was just the unbelievable property just being literally within the park. There's no fence between the hotel and the park. The accessibility, the concierge that just books directly with the park rangers and things like that. So I also do enjoy the luxury of that kind of property, as well as the butlers with caviar and champagne.
Yeah, and for those that have not looked at the Protea, I'll put the link in the from the Marriott website. It's integrated. It is a brand where they have very different levels, and especially say around Namibia, it's more of the modest, you might call the 2 or 3 star ones, and then in South Africa they have ones that are all range from more the 2 or 3 star up to the 5 star. They recently rebranded some that I think used to be called like Fire. I think there's actually a few that are still called African Pride. They also have Fire and Ice. So if you look for some of these names, you'll see some of the higher end ones, and they are.
I at the Protea in Livingston, just outside of Victoria Falls, and was perfectly fine. It was a Category 1 hotel, but it was $350 a night or 7,000 Marriott points.
And I believe at the time we visited for the first time, I think they were all Category 1s.
Yeah.
Across the board, which made it, a no-brainer to just book Protea all the way.
Yeah, and even now, I think very few are even more than Category 3 throughout their African footprint. And as you said, some of these are markets where any hotel is extremely expensive, just because there's not.
There's the great Protea in Stellenbosch, what it's pronounced, in the wine country. It's Category 2, where if you want to go wine tasting, it's great to have a bouncing off point as a Category 2 hotel. Yeah. Try getting a Category 2 in Napa.
Well, that's why. I'm trying to think when I've actually used points for stays in the U.S. I use certificates at times where it's a fixed point value or something, but I just in Europe to a degree, a lot of the European, at least Western European, I feel like the categories are high and the service is less than what I'm going to expect for that price. But Eastern Europe, anywhere once you've crossed into Bratislava, anywhere between Bratislava and Sapporo, I think you're getting into good value around the world.
I would add anywhere not a capital or a very large city center. I think we found a lot of value in points in second cities or third cities even, where there's not a lot of properties, but there's the one Marriott or the one Hyatt. And it may not be the top brand, but it is available at a cheap rate on points, sometimes even on cash. We usually tend to travel not in high season, so those properties start coming into play pretty easily, as opposed to just off network, not main chain hotels that we don't usually stay a lot of properties.
That's a great point. I'm thinking of some of these where, sticking again on the Marriott portfolio, a lot of brands that if you have a perception of what they're like in the U.S., like a Four Points,
Right.
Which in the U.S. is generally going to be
Meh.
meh. Yeah, I think that's a great way. But you see some Four Points, Shanghai Yuyuan Garden. I mean, some of these that I've seen
Yeah.
around the world.
We stayed at the 4 Points Arusha,
Yeah.
which was pretty good, actually. Yeah.
Mhm.
They went over the top to the point, like when they realized, oh, it's the Titanium Ambassador. Whatever you need, let us know. Like at normally at 4 Points anywhere else, be like elevators to the left. Bye.
Yeah.
Like it's they had pride in the fact that they were a 4 Points. So
Yeah, just out of the 4 Points in Ljubljana, Slovenia that I stayed at on a business trip. I wasn't supposed to be in Slovenia on that business trip, I have to say, but I was in the broader region. So
sure, it's just right there. It's across the water. Sure.
are we? Has the dog woken up? Are we going to see a dog to close out? Or
I can get him. Sure.
He will be moody, just so that you know.
Oh, good morning.
He's 5.5 months old, so all he does is pretty much nap all day.
And when he's being summoned, so Ben, you have a house and garden full of all kinds of plants. What is something that you've succeeded growing in the Seattle climate that you shouldn't be able to?
Great question. So I like African plants, and I treasure them. That's the majority of the ones I have. So those are the ones I have. I have a few from Socotra Island as well. So those are the ones that definitely don't grow here, except in my greenhouse on the yard. But yeah.
How does one get plants from Socotra Island?
Well, I assume at some point somebody smuggled them many years ago. I have not been there, so that wasn't me. But some of them are pretty widely found in some large, very dedicated nurseries. That's how they came to my possession.
These aren't going to be dragon's blood or bottle trees, are they?
No, unfortunately, don't have the room to keep those, but I would love them.
So what are the ones you have then?
So I have a lot of pachypodiums, which are Madagascar in general, and I have Asclepiads, which they're called stink flowers. Usually they smell like rotted flesh because they attract a lot of flies for pollination. So yeah, and that's why also they're in the greenhouse and not in the house, because nobody likes flowers that stink up the house. So yeah, but yeah, they're as you can expect, African and because they've been isolated, they're pretty unique. And I didn't grow up with very unique flora where I'm from. So,
and what was that giant killer thing you had to remove from the front yard for safety?
That is a tree from Argentina and Brazil. Very spiky. Flowers are unbelievable. Which we found in a nursery in San Diego, and we drove all the way from there in a truck that we rented. We planted it in the front yard. The city of Seattle requires you to request permission to plant anything on the sidewalk, and they denied my request because they deemed it way too dangerous.
No
for
kidding. It's
Seattle
razor blades on the trunk.
I could see why. Still hurt by it, but yeah. Oh,
And the cameo, please introduce. Not looking cranky at all.
I feel like we shouldn't say his name because it might be a security code one day. No.
Okay.
This is Darwin after the SS Beagle. Yeah.
Fantastic.
He is tired. He's just 5 months old now. Yeah. Yeah. Here's Darwin. Hey. Hi. Cranky. Oh, we just took him for a big run We have a park across the street, and there was a couple dogs over there that we just let them off leash, and they just ran around and chased the ball for about 20 minutes. So he took a real nice nap.
Fantastic.
Now we play again.
All right, Darwin, John, Ben, thank you for joining us tonight.
Say bye-bye.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.